The video before this one, Ellen and I talked about all the things that we've heard people say that are so terrible to say to somebody who is grieving. So it's like the what not to say to somebody who is grieving. And we also offered some support if people do say those things to you and you're grieving, because it does happen so often. And in there was also some tips for how to better talk to people who are grieving, and some tips for how to work through grief if you are experiencing grieving. So to kind of follow up with that, I wanted to do a whole video on just some tips for working through grief and talking through that a little bit more. So there are some of this kind of things scattered throughout that last video, but there's also a lot of other tips and that kind of stuff. So I want to do this whole video on kind of some things that help us when we're grieving, and some things that can kind of support us in working through all of that. And this is such an awful, complicated, terrible process, and it's not simple. I think the stages of grief are helpful as far as like ideas, and maybe normalizing that there are different stages that are normal in this process. But grief is not a staircase. It's not like a stage process. It's not a linear process. Healing is never a linear process in my experience, ever. So the stages of grief are helpful as far as understanding, yeah, sometimes I'm going to be mad, and sometimes I'm going to be more depressed, and sometimes I'm going to be fighting with this idea that they're even gone, or that kind of thing is helpful and does happen. But we tend to jump back and forth between the stages. We stay in some stages for a long time. We can easily go like from 1 to 5 to 3 to 1, right? It's just more of like a kind of a crazy web than it is a line. So I want to reinforce that too, that it's just an ugly, hard, awful process. And we never really work through it in the way that we're the same, right? We don't work through the process and the stages and then we're back to normal. Normal is changed now, and it's always going to be different. And I think that can be really beautiful sometimes. Obviously painful and terrible and not what you would want to be dealing with, but it can be beautiful in that pain and loss changes us, and sometimes it changes us in a way that it kind of softens, I think, our heart a little bit, going through that much pain and tragedy. And sometimes it makes us more empathetic to others. It makes us able to help others and connect with others more if we kind of lean into that and can kind of go to that vulnerable place. A lot of people also do really just great things out of grief, and I think that's one thing that can kind of transform grief, is we move into helping other people, or trying to support other people who have gone through the same thing, or supporting other people who have also lost a child, or trying to advocate against drunk driving if you lost someone that way. Like, that kind of thing happens a lot, and I think you can find support in those systems as well. So this is terrible and it's an awful thing to go through, but it also can change us, not just for the worse and for the more painful path, but it can also change us for the better in some ways, right? Of course, you don't want to be changed this way ever. That's not what I'm saying. Anyway, so that's part of it too. But I do have some kind of things that I want to go over, and some things that I've written down as far as like tips for working through this kind of stuff. But I just wanted to say first that it's not linear, and it never is. So don't feel bad if you're not like further along, because that doesn't exist. We're all different in this process. But the first kind of thing I have for you guys is you have to get some level of support. Now, this looks different for everyone, and that's also okay. So if you're not the type of person that wants to go to a group, or maybe isn't ready for that, or isn't ready to talk about it at all, you can still get support through other things. And that's, I think, a big thing with this, is if you're not ready to talk through it with somebody, or maybe you never will be ready to talk through it like in a group or something, there are other options. So I really find reading helps, working through your own stuff just with you and maybe a book or a worksheet, maybe just getting some validation, some connection that way. That's something that you can do without being as vulnerable, without stepping out of your comfort zone more. Just You know, you can even buy a book on Amazon, have it sent to your house. No one has to know, and you're working through it on your own when you want to, when you can by yourself. That's fine. That is a level of support, and that's great. So look for other ways to support yourself. I think books, obviously, worksheets. I think poetry can also be really powerful. Music is an amazing healer and a way to process and feel and kind of sit with your emotions. And those are all more ways that are a little bit less intense. I think other ways that are really helpful, obviously, are also joining groups and getting kind of connected with people who are going through similar things. In-person groups are incredibly powerful. But again, if you don't want that or you're not ready for that, there's online groups and forums that can also offer a level of support. Obviously, therapy. I'm going to plug therapy because that's such a big thing to help you work through some of this. There's also like dealing with grief courses and like workshops and stuff that can be helpful. Like videos like this, if you're watching this, I think you can get a lot of support through videos and just trying to connect with people. And there's different ways to do that. It doesn't always have to be in person. So you can check out videos and that kind of thing online and get some help and support that way. The next thing that I think is so helpful is to get active in some way, right? To get out there and do something. And this doesn't mean you have to like actively be working on your grief, even though that is helpful. Like I think trauma yoga is so good, working through trauma through yoga, and there are trauma-informed yoga classes. But you don't have to go to that. You can go to a regular yoga class. You can go to a really nice like flow class. You can go to one of those classes that are in the dark and kind of have the lights and soothing music, so it can be really calming. But getting active is a really good way to process some of this, to also kind of get an endorphin boost and just to get back out there a bit. So I mean, going to the gym, trying new classes, I think is really good. Maybe things that you've always wanted to do, like trying a self-defense class or a karate class or, you know, ballet or something, just to kind of switch it up and get out there and get active. Even though that's often the opposite of what we want to do, we want to retreat and we don't want to see anyone, we don't want to talk to anyone, we don't want to do anything. But pushing against that and doing something can really help. I think that, you know, as far as classes go, for me and for a lot of other people, I think dance is a really cool way to do that and a way to connect with other people and to heal and work through that. And that's one of the things that I love. Dance classes, I love salsa classes, but obviously any dance will be the same. I'm really trying to get one of my favorite dance teachers to shoot a video with me on how healing dance can be, because he sees a lot of people who end up coming to him after a loss or after a divorce or after a transition and not consciously like working through it, but they end up working through it through dance. And I think that's amazing and so beautiful. And so I'd love to shoot a video with him on that. So if you're watching this and I'm going to send this to you, let's shoot a video. But that can be so healing and so powerful. It connects you to a community. It challenges you. It pushes you out of your comfort zone, but it also soothes you and helps you process. So that's a big one there that I think is so powerful. So getting out there and trying something new can really help. And maybe it's something that you never thought would help, or that you never thought you would like to try that actually does help. So get out there and try something and just see how it goes. And sometimes getting a friend to come with you to do that is also good and helps make it a little less scary. There's just a few more that I want to mention, but I think another thing that's really important is to be incredibly loving and patient with yourself in this process and reaffirm every day, sometimes multiple times a day, that you're doing the best you can. You're doing everything you can to work through this, and that there are gonna be bad days, there are gonna be days that are a little better, and that's how it goes. And just kind of giving yourself permission to struggle and just to have a bad day. Just some days it's gonna be one of those days, and it's gonna be, you know, a time where maybe everything makes you cry or feel emotional or feel upset, and that's just that day. So as much as you can be patient with that and do what you need to do and take care of yourself and just let yourself cry and maybe fight and be angry or sad or sleep or whatever you need to do to get through that. that's just sometimes what we have to do. Just remind ourselves, this is awful, but this is how this goes, and there's nothing wrong with me in this. It's just a really awful situation. And kind of along with that, being able to advocate for yourself and what you need. So if it's one of those days that you just can't get through and you just need to sleep and watch Netflix, that's okay. You can do that. Take some time to be able to do that. Obviously, you still have responsibilities, so taking care of what you need to do and then making space to just check out and do that. Or, sometimes distract yourself with something, like, call a friend, or do something just to take your mind off of it as much as you can for a minute. Just do what you need to do and what you need. And sometimes that's also asking for help and asking people to help support you, or, to do something for you. And that can be really uncomfortable for people to ask for help, but it's okay to need people and to need support and to ask for that. And so many people want to help in these situations, but they don't know how. So asking for that, like, I'm sorry to bother you with this, but is there any way that you could help this? Like, help me with this. This could really help, whether that's with work or with the kids or anything. Just ask for support and ask people who want to help you and want to support you. Because often people want to, but they really don't know how. So you're actually helping them help you if you kind of advocate for yourself and what you need. And also set boundaries. Like, if you can't handle doing something, or you agree to something and then it gets to that day and you can't do it, that's okay. You don't have to do anything that you don't want to do. So advocate for yourself, set boundaries, take care of yourself. Those are all things that will help keep you a little more sane and just a little more okay. The last thing that I want to mention is kind of creating rituals and creating kind of memories around this person and around kind of some important dates of the year, because dates can be really hard. Birthdays, anniversaries, holidays, those things can be really tough when going through them without that person in your life. So if and when you're ready, you can start creating things that help you remember them and connect to them and feel close to them. Some people have like birthday rituals where they send balloons off into the air, or they do something that person would have liked, or have a treat that they would have liked to kind of remember that person and talk about them and feel like connected to them. So that is something that's really cool. I know a family that does it's like Wednesday, I think, like Donut Wednesdays, because the dad loved donuts. So every week they go and get donuts, and even when they're apart, they do that. So even if you're not in the same city or state or country, you can still celebrate that person and take a moment to remember them wherever you are. So those kind of things can be powerful. I also do a lot of like letter writing with my clients. So writing a letter to update the person on what's going on, or how you're feeling, or how you feel about them, or thanking them for all the things that they taught you and they meant to you. So writing that and kind of connecting to them that way is really helpful. Sometimes we'll do that at Christmas and kind of write a letter to that person. Also kind of telling them, like, this is what you meant to me. We're such like a great example of love and giving, or things like that. And then find ways to keep their spirit alive by living out those things. So if they were a really service-oriented person, you can do acts of service kind of in their honor. If they were really free and adventurous, doing something adventurous to kind of connect with them and keep that sort of energy alive. Those things are really, really, really powerful. Also, like, when you're ready and if you're ready, creating things like a picture or a poem that reminds you of them or that they liked, or Christmas ornaments, with their picture or with something that kind of connects you to them. Those kind of things can be really helpful and powerful, but don't rush them if you're not ready for that, or if you don't feel like that's going to help you help, or it's going to be too much, and only do the things that you want to do with that. So take whatever out of this whole video that's helpful and leave the rest. You don't need to do all of these things. You don't need to do any of these things. Maybe one of them sounds good and you can try that, but this is supposed to be for you and what you need. So don't add pressure, and don't add a list of, oh, I should be doing this, because that's exactly what we don't want to do. You don't need to add more to what you feel like you need to do. You just need to take care of yourself in a way that works for you and not add pressure and guilt to the list of things that you're not doing. So if something in here was helpful, try it out, test it out. If it's not helpful again, don't do it again. If it is helpful, then keep doing that. And again, if you need support or you have any questions or anything you want me to keep kind of expounding on, please reach out to me. You can submit those completely anonymously as well at my website, trueachievcounseling.com. And so I hope some of this helped. Some of this was a little bit supportive for you guys, and I know this is so awful. So we're here with you, we're in the struggle with you, and you can keep fighting and keep going together. We can keep going and keep fighting together, but just know that you're not alone.